constant quest to find better scenes to shoot sometimes needs a little inspiration, sparked by something new, a new location, new gear, or even just a new challenge. All this new can be great, but it's not always achievable and can sometimes be a little expensive. So this morning, we're going to try and find something new in something old. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. More about them later.
G'day there. I've come down to the Engine Up Natural Spas. It's just over to my right over here. In my previous video, I just took a little bit, a couple of 100 meters to my left. But I've decided to come right down in between those two spots because there was a little location that I found that I thought might make a really nice image.
Returning to a location you've successfully shot before is like catching up with an old mate. Parts of their character are familiar, like their awesome sense of humour or their insistence to buy the first round of beers. But each time you get together, it's another opportunity to discover something new.
So I found this little pool of water in amongst the rocks here. I actually found it yesterday morning when I was capturing some drone shots of the area, some drone footage for the video. I went over to the natural spas and found that location and took quite an interesting little shot of that. And then as I was flying back over to bring the drone back, I found this little pool of water in amongst the rocks. And it's quite a large pool of water. It's probably the size of a small house. That's the kind of footprint. And it's got this lovely green moss, which I'm really enjoying at this time of the year, just around the edge of it. And it really highlights that pool quite nicely. The rest of the rocks are quite dark, although there's some beautiful colours, beautiful rich reds and oranges, which I'm going to be able to pull out some of those colours hopefully when in post-process. And then I've got the water itself, and it's pretty blue, which is quite nice. It's white because there's some sand at the bottom of the pool, but that in contrast with the green moss and the darker rocks, I think is going to be quite nice. And it creates a bit of a V as well, which is, I've positioned the camera so I'm at the end of that V and I'm kind of looking down. And yes, it would have been nice if I had a really beautiful sunset or sunrise sky, but of course the sun is rising behind me, so I'm in the wrong direction. And it's really clouded in anyway, so I'm not going to bother with trying to capture light in the sky. I'm concentrating on light on the ground, particularly in the foreground. My f-stop is somewhere between 18 and 20. And my shutter speed is 1/3 of a second, which is really, really nice. There's not a lot of wind. Every now and then a wave comes in and ripples the water a little bit, but I just take my time, wait for the water to just flatten out. I've got a shutter speed of 1/3 of a second, which is perfect for this situation. And all it is just waiting for the ripples in the water to calm down, and then I just take the shot. I like coming to this location because I become more familiar with the location. There is the popular spot, which is the natural spas, just over my right hand shoulder, as I said before. And there was this other location that the previous video was about. If I keep exploring the area, I just become a little bit more familiar with the shapes of the rocks, the lines of the rocks, where those locations are that potentially have some really good interest. But it's things like that you just come back to a location and become a little bit more familiar with it. Your eye becomes a little bit more attuned to the landscape, the features, the textures, the colours that are available. And that's why I really like coming back to a location like this.
This content is made possible by supporters over at Patreon. Check it out if you're interested, or just hit subscribe below so you don't miss out on my next trip.
Made it. Climb my way out of that jungle of rocks. It's a hell of a lot of fun though. You know, as photographers, we always try and find ways to extend ourselves creatively and extend our portfolio with different images. I reckon that's one of the real advantages in coming back to a location that you've probably shot before. You know, the first time I came back here, I would have shot the natural springs 8-10 years ago. But every time I come back, and I've come back to this location several times over the years, I push myself to look for different compositions, different little scenes to be able to shoot. And it was because of the drone that I actually found this particular shot. But yeah, I try and push myself to find something new, something different. I think that really tests our creativity and pushes us a little bit to find something new, to find a different composition that hopefully we'll get a unique image from.
Before I share another image, I just want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Years ago, I created a website because I wanted a place to share my images that wasn't a social platform, but a place I owned and controlled. I chose Squarespace because of the simple, clean templates they offered that helped make my images look great on both mobile and desktop devices. I've stayed with Squarespace for so many years because they make the process of setting up and maintaining a website so easy. They take care of hosting and all the updates, so all I have to do is focus on the content I want to share. They even make that easy because I can just drag and drop content around to where I want it. I don't have to deal with any code. Over time, I've extended the website to share my YouTube videos. I've set up a blog as well as an online store for my prints. You can also add a membership area and manage email lists and create online newsletters. So you can adapt your website to support where you want to take your photography. So head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial. That'll give you heaps of time to set up your website. And then when you're ready to launch, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Andrew Marr to get 10% off your first purchase. I have one or two mates that I don't get to see all that frequently. But when we do catch up, it's like we hang out all the time. I get that same sense of familiarity when coming to locations like this. Reminiscing about old times is like checking out scenes I've shot before. And catching up on news and events since we last saw each other is similar to spending time finding new scenes that this landscape has to offer.
Kate and I were just walking back to the car, and we just thought we would walk down the other side of this area just to have a bit of a look. I brought my camera. I didn't think we were necessarily going to find an image, but it just so happens we found this gorgeous little spot which is facing out towards the north. One of the advantages of coming back to a location all the time is you get it in different seasons and you get different conditions. And I was mentioning before that we haven't got the swell that we normally would. If we normally had our normal swell here, I'd be standing in water. It'd be crashing over me, all of these rocks. So it'd be a very, very dangerous spot for us to stand. But these are very unique conditions today. The swell is very, very small. So the waves that are coming through are tiny, which means that I can come down with the camera right down to the water's edge and quite safely take a shot. So I'm taking advantage of that. What I've done is I've come as close as I possibly can. The water in front of me isn't moving a lot. It's quite still. Every now and then it gets pushed by a wave. So I've got the camera up reasonably high, pointing down towards the water. But I've got these boulders just in the foreground, or probably in the midground in the end. I've got this boulder right in front of me, which I'll show you, which I've just offset, just left of the center. I think it gives the image a little bit more balance that way. My ISO is 100, my aperture is 20, and my shutter speed, I've still managed to get it to 1/3. I was prepared to put a graduated filter over the top, or just an ND filter, sorry. But I've got the polarizer, which is just taking the sheen or the gleam off the surface of the water. Just allows me to capture some of that. That is exactly what I was waiting for, which I was going to explain in a second, and I will. But I've got the polarizer there, which is just taking a little bit of the glare off the water, which means that I can get a clearer detail of what's underneath the water, which is just these gorgeous, gorgeous rocks. So as far as timing is concerned, I'm waiting for one of these reasonably large waves to come through and push just on the right-hand side of this large boulder. The two rocks kind of come together, and it squeezes some water in between these and makes just this tiny little waterfall. And I'm trying to capture that waterfall with a 1/3 of a second shutter speed, which would look really, really nice as just some foreground image, which would set the rest of this scene off quite nicely. So I'm just going to sit here and see whether I get the right wave, see whether I get the right light, and see how I go. Anyway, I'll show you that image, but thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.